Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. It's Cloud Native Security Live. I'm here with Mike Liedike of Deloitte. I'm Alex Williams of the New Stack. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Want to talk with you about immutable infrastructure. For those who may not be so familiar with the concept, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so immutable infrastructure is a concept that a lot of people are trying to get to. But before I dive into what immutable infrastructure is, I want to talk about what mutable infrastructure is to kind of lead into immutable. So mutable infrastructure is the mutation of something in place. And traditionally in our environments, we have changes happening at the server when you go to upgrade, say, a web server like an Apache to version 1 to version 2, you would either log into that system, do the upgrade, or use some kind of configuration management tool like Chef, Puppet, or Ansible to do that upgrade. And when you do that across 1,000 instances, or when you do that across 1,000 instances, you have a lot of room for error, a lot of room for inconsistencies when you do that in-place upgrade. And then you have those outliers that are that 5% you have to log in. It's a lot of manual steps to do that. So which leads into what is immutable infrastructure. Instead of doing those changes in place, you would actually build a new server with all the upgrades already in place, and then deploy your systems and decommission the old ones. And what immutable infrastructure gives you is the ability to have a consistent environment across your entire fleet of systems, which gives you a simpler deployment, more predictable deployment, and allows you to do the testing more consistently and promote your environments from dev, test to prod.
And it's really associated with container technologies, isn't it?
Container technologies is a component of what you can do with immutable infrastructure. And that's one form of it. So you can deploy it you can use immutable infrastructure concepts in regular instances, and then you can also do it in containers and lock those down to be not changing when you do your promotions from your environments, or if you do patch changes. And you can do that at the container level, you can do that at the instance level. Either way you want to do it.
What's the value then of immutable infrastructure then? From an application development point of view, from application-oriented architectures?
Yeah, so the value of the immutable infrastructure allows you to, as an app developer, deploy your code consistently to an environment that doesn't change. You always know where your code is going to be deployed to, how it's going to be deployed, how the system's going to run that code, instead of a systems admin going in, making changes, configuration changes, or patch changes that the app developer wasn't aware of, or if they are aware of, wasn't ready for that change to happen on their systems, and it caused issues. So what the immutable infrastructure does when you build new systems, gives that consistent, reliable infrastructure for the application to run on.
So that ties in with this concept of infrastructure as code. For what you describe is essentially using the code to manage the infrastructure.
Yeah, so infrastructure as code, all the major cloud providers have their own native tool that does it, and there's third-party tools that do it as well. And infrastructure as code allows you to do all that provisioning of the infrastructure components, like your instances, your networking, your security, and push it into your dev environment. And then as you promote those to dev and test and prod, you can easily repeat your environments in a consistent manner all the way up to production, and allows your app developers to know that no matter what environment they're in, they're always going to be in a consistent environment and not have to worry about that when they deploy their applications.
Otherwise, with mutable infrastructure, then you would be forced to do it manually and custom every time, which has been done in the past, but now is really not that efficient, nor is it really possible.
Well, I would say it is possible. It's not the desired state of things in today's world with all the automation, all the technology to allow us to be more efficient and deliver at a faster pace with infrastructure as code and configuration management and making those changes in a version controlled environment so you can easily roll back if there's a code issue or deploy a whole new environment within minutes rather than days or months.
Right, right. So it's possible, but it makes it much more difficult and not very efficient either.
Exactly. Yep.
Great. So what's the intersection of immutable infrastructure and cloud native security?
With using everything as code, so infrastructure as code, your configuration management as code, it allows you to build out a portfolio of templates that can be reused across environments, across applications, and it can be reviewed by security engineers to ensure that you are adding the security components to your code. For instance, in say AWS with a security group, you want to have all your instances only allow certain ports to your EC2 instances or your containers, and ensure that the attack surface is not open to every single port. And doing this in code and doing it in a reviewable way that your security team can know that every time this is deployed, I know that my security for that system or application is perfect every single time. And there's not going to be somebody going in there to make a change to test something and then forget that they tested it and left the port wide open and then allow somebody to take advantage of that.
You need you need those patterns that are very similar, don't you? Like you were saying before, you really need to have practices and processes and workflows that are fairly standardized, which is a core aspect of the DevOps culture, so to speak. And we now hear more about the DevSecOps culture, and what you say seems to me embodies that concept itself.
Exactly. So taking all your teams and turning it into a collaborative effort from your security team to your applications team to your admins team, and having all the teams work together to build out these repeatable solutions and templates that can be built in a secure fashion using like CIS hardening guidelines or FedRAMP guidelines or any guidelines that you would need to have in your environment. You can have that built in and know that an app developer doesn't necessarily need to know how to use, say, CloudFormation to add all these security components, where the security team can create those components in CloudFormation, and the app team can just adopt those and pull those into their code and know that that is in place and they are secure without actually needing to understand the security behind it. So the DevSecOps model gives you a collaboration of all your teams, as well as the audit trail gives everybody the security, knowing that they're deploying safe applications.
And just to sum everything up then, and some of the key points to consider, it really does seem like it's that standardization. It's following those processes with the people and their workflows and those supporting technologies as well. And so you can bring really a center of excellence to what you provide, and that then can encompass security, which has their own best practices. And then the cultural challenge then is bringing all of that together.
Yeah, the technology is always the easy part, but the hard part is how do you bring your organization that has been doing things in a way for many years, how do you start to adopt that new mindset of infrastructure as code or collaboration between all your teams more effectively to be able to produce a faster product and a more consistent, reliable, and secure way.
Mike, thank you very much for your time. I've been learning a little bit more about immutable infrastructure with Mike Liedike. He's the manager in Deloitte's Consulting's Innovations and Platforms team with Deloitte. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alex.
Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcasts. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Prisma by Palo Alto Networks is the sponsor of this episode of the New Stack Makers. Governed access plus pervasive protection for data, apps, hosts, containers, and serverless. This is the proper foundation for the journey to the cloud. Prisma, the industry's most complete cloud security suite, helps customers accelerate their journey with risk visibility and consistent security.